Hello everyone, welcome to this new video. A while ago I released a video about this lightning fast quarry. A few weeks have passed and I made some improvement tweaks and changes to the design to make it faster and easier to build. A few months passed since the starting of the project. It has been a lot of work, but today is finally the day that I can call this design finished. In today's video I want to take you through the world of designing this quarry and everything that has come with it. I will do that in a few separate parts. First of all, I will talk quickly about how this design works. This won't take long and won't go into any depth. This is just so you have a clear picture of what I want to reach in the next part. In the second part I will go over all the important steps that it took to complete this quarry. I won't go into too much detail because then this will be a 5-hour long video, but the important steps will be mentioned. Here I will also give credits to the people that deserve it. In the last part I will talk about a few different things, mainly focusing on why this quarry is as reliable as it is. This is the flying machine that is being used to process the blocks up. When it is pushed into the stone and flies upwards, it takes all the blocks with it. At the bottom of the flying machine there are two sets of pistons. The set with normal pistons is used to get rid of liquids. The set with sticky pistons is used to get rid of gravity blocks, such as sand and gravel. The blocks are scraped off the flying machine while it flies upwards. They are pushed into a TNT blast chamber. The blocks first are pushed closer together to make the blast chamber more efficient. The TNT tubers of the blast chamber run on their own clock. The TNT tubers are synchronized with the blocks being pushed in, meaning that the blocks are always block 36 when the TNT explodes. At the top the flying machine is sent down again by updating all the observers on the flying machine and finally updating the engine. When the block grabber reaches the bottom, the tiny flying machine is launched. This flying machine pushes the block grabbers back into the stone. From now on I will refer to this flying machine as the pusher flying machine. This completes the whole cycle. Now the cycle can start over again and mine the next layer. This quarry also has a roof. This roof reduces the lag and makes the quarry weatherproof. The roof is moved at the least laggiest part of the cycle. This is when the pusher flying machine pushes forward the block grabbers. In total, one cycle takes a little more than 3 minutes. This makes it up to 6 times faster than the current fastest quarry. This quarry of course requires some preparation work. You need to mine out these side trenches, which just need to be 1 wide. You also need to make sure that no water flows inwards, because this can update observers and mess up the quarry. On the bottom you need a 5 height clearance. This can be done by, for example, a TNT tunnel bore. This is the basic idea behind this quarry. Right now it might seem like I designed this quarry in a few hours, just put all the parts together and got it working. This obviously is not the case. I will show the work that got into this quarry by going over the design process. The only concept I started with when I started this project. The first problem I wanted to solve was gravity blocks and liquids, since those are the most problematic blocks for an overworld quarry. Liquids have a pretty standard solution for overworld quarries, mainly a block shield. A block shield essentially means that before you try to bring a block up, you first try to push it. If the block could be pushed, for example because there were liquids behind, the block will be pushed and the liquids are crushed. This means that the 12 blocks in front of the quarry are always full blocks and do not contain any liquids. Gravel was a bit harder to solve. I used these sticky pistons to get rid of the gravel. What they do is they pull out the next layer. If there was any gravel on this layer, it will fall down and can be destroyed with slabs. This means that all the gravel is sorted out. The nice thing is that when the block grabber flying machine flies back down again, it will also pull the blocks in, meaning that no further redesigning needed to be done. This successfully sorts all the gravel in the layer that it will mine next. The next thing I wanted to focus on was getting the blocks off the flying machine. I wanted to do this while the flying machine was still moving, since this will be the fastest and the easiest. The 2 blocks on the side were pretty easy, and I was able to move them with a pretty simple system like this. So this successfully pushes the blocks on the side of the block grabber flying machine. These tiny systems are also easily movable, for example just by pushing at the back here. Until this part in the video, I decided to first record myself speaking, and after that look for footage to put over it. It took a lot of time though, so I now decide to just speak while I'm recording. So as you can see, I skipped a few steps forward because I can explain those steps with this quarry here. Here you can see the block pusher, which pushes a flying machine. And here I also have a way to get rid of the blocks in the front here, because I still needed a way to get rid of those blocks. So those blocks were a bit harder to pull off. So you can basically see how that works here. Just pushes them up like this. So if I now run the full quarry cycle, so you can also see that I used these pistons right here that also create a block shield to push off this stuff forward. So that's just a neat little trick that I used a lot in this quarry. So I think after I had this set up, I focused on sending a flying machine back down again. I did it by having, for example, these pistons here push forward, and then they update the observers, so they create this little gap here. And then finally, I update this engine, which sent the whole flying machine back down. At this point, I decided to start working at the bottom. The bottom consists out of a few steps. First of all, the flying machine is stopped in the separated part. Then you can first move over these pistons, and then move over this part. What this will do is push everything forward and launch these flying machines. As you can see, the flying machine ends up one block forward in this retracted state, which means that you can fly it up again. You can also see that I connected these, the block pushers that create the side blocks of the flying machine are connected to a return station. So right now I can basically just send the flying machine off again. So right here I thought that the quarry was coming along quite nicely, but then I discovered the big mistake that I made, which is as follows. So you need to pay close attention to these block streams. You'll see that they are actually not moved at the same time. Here you can about see that. And first the bottom block stream is pushed, and then the top block stream is pushed. You can see that there's quite a big delay between those block streams. This means that there is no good time to explode the TNT. So you want to explode the TNT when the blocks are moving because they have lower blast resistance. But in this case there is no such moment, since the block streams are not moved at the same time. This meant that I had to go through some major redesigning. I was not able to move the block streams at exactly the same time. That is why I had to do something totally different. This design here was the next step in the design process, but unfortunately it's not working anymore. After the design I copied from did blow up. So I can't show you the thing in action, but I can explain how it was meant to work. So you can see here, instead of keeping the block streams at the same height, I've first tried to push this one up, like this. And then we have two separate TNT systems, one at the top and one at the bottom. I took these systems from Pala's quarry. It was not the ideal TNT system for this quarry, since it could not really keep up with the speed of the blocks, but I wanted to try it anyway to see what I could get with it. So I hooked it up to this quarry. It ran on a clock, so here you can see the clock. I won't go into too much detail how this clock actually works. I'll do that on the final design. So what this clock does is it tubes TNT every 52 game ticks. Then after some delay, the TNT gets shot forward to the right position to blow up the blocks. So each block stream has their own TNT system. So this TNT system is for the top block stream, and this TNT system here is for the bottom block stream, which meant that each TNT system could be synchronized to its own block stream. So this solved the problem of the block streams not being pushed at the same time. So it's of course not the smallest solution, but it worked for now. I put all the parts together, and after a few hours I got everything working. The Quarry mined for about layer or 30 and it seemed to be working fine, but then finally, unfortunately, the TNT system clogged up. There was not much I could do about it apart from making the TNT system faster. I could not use this TNT system for it though, so I had to do some major redesigning. At this point I was really frustrated with the project. I already spent around 50 hours to get to this point and I still had nothing working. So I took a break from the project for a few days, and that is when To Know The Name hit me up. He said he basically was working on the same project and he wanted to work with me on some of the parts. So he indeed was working on exactly the same project and he came up with it independently. He was a bit less far with the project, so he did not have a TNT system yet, but he had some nice systems which I could use from him. For example, one of the systems you can see right here. So this also pulls the blocks of the middle strip of the flying machine, so those blocks right there. But it just does it in a bit of a nicer way. He also convinced me to take another look and see if we could move these block streams at the same time. And we actually managed to do it. So the block streams did not move at exactly the same time. There still was a 1 gain-tix difference. This was not really a problem, since there was a moment where both the block streams were block 36. This meant that we could actually use one TNT system. So you can see the TNT system right here. At this point, To Know The Name stopped with helping on this exact same project, but he started working on a project that is related to this quarry, but I'll just keep it a secret for now. So I converted Pella's TNT system to what you can see right here. At first did not perfectly align the TNT, which caused some problems. This is where also Xcom joined the project, and he's really good with TNT alignment. So we added some pistons right here which perfectly aligned the TNT. So at this point the quarry was looking really promising. This TNT system actually was 2 times faster as the previous TNT system, and it could quite easily keep up with the blocks. This here is the first surviving version of this quarry. So I can now activate it and show exactly what happens. So you can see while the quarry flies up, it runs on this clock right here. This activates the TNT tubers every 26 gain-tix. We also made some changes to the water system. So previous the water system was 7 blocks wide, which was the maximum for the system. But we changed it so the water system is not pushed by an instant wire, but actually by the same pistons that create a block shield. This meant that the water system could be up to 10 blocks wide. So here you can see those pistons are going to move forward the water stream. As you can see, just like that. So at this point I thought the design was almost finished. This was also the point at which I created the video, which you could see a couple of weeks ago. But then Xcom actually pointed out a lot of things we could still improve. So for example, the TNT system still was a bit lossy, and about 5% of the items were being blown up by the TNT. So also the TNT system itself could use some improvements, because we basically just tried to fix the old TNT system, which this is not really the optimal way of aligning the TNT. Then we could also optimize this glass here. That was an idea by me because it's just not necessary to place that much glass. And the roof also could use some optimizations. So this is when I want to go to the last version of the quarry, which is the finished version. Here you can see the last versions of the quarry. The TNT system got improved a lot. That was mainly a work by Pingu. He used some really clever tricks. For example, in the T flip-flop. This is the T flip-flop. When the block is pushed out, the TNT tuber won't tube since the tuber is over the push limit. But when you retract the block, it now will tube. Which means that you can basically choose at which point you want to tube the TNT. So to create the alternating pattern, you can just have one block in, out, in, out. Then for the TNT alignment, you use this fence right here. This aligns it in one direction, and in the other direction it uses this piston. So there's a bug in the game where if this piston here will fire when the TNT is exactly behind it, it will perfectly align the TNT. So I basically made sure that it was movable and stuff like that. It relies on the update order. So basically right now this piston here can't retract. At least not if this block is in that position, because it is over the push limit. First this piston here needs to retract like this, and only then you can actually retract this piston. So this happens in the same game tick. But to make sure that this piston actually updates first, it needs to be in the negative direction, which means that you can only use this quarry in two directions. If you want to use it in the other directions, for example right there, you actually need to mirror the design. So that is why I left 4 designs in this world download, so you don't have to figure out in which direction you have to mirror the design yourself. Then Pingu also helped with the roof. So Xcom convinced us that we needed to make the roof as easily buildable as possible. That is why you can see that we have all the observers in a straight line with all pistons in a straight line. So you can make this a bit cheaper, for example by doing it like this. So now you would only need 1 observer per 3 pistons, but this will just get really annoying to build, especially if you want to make a 300 watt version or so. That is why we just chose to keep the design like this. On the bottom layer we also have all the pistons in the same line, but to prevent that we have to use all observers in the back here, we actually put them in the top. So these 2 rows are moved at the same time, which means that this piston here gets powered by this observer. So it is still easily buildable, but it does not use azimuth observers. A few other things got improved. For example, we used terracotta instead of pistons, and we made sure that the insta warriors were as resource light as possible. Race and Pingu improved the water system a bit. They did refill the water like this, but there's unfortunately a bit of a bug in the game, where if I reload these chunks, the water freezes again, as you can see right here. We solved that by having these light sources to melt the ice again, but this of course is not really a nice solution. So you either have to keep the quarry loaded the entire time, which is needed for it to run anyway, but this means that you can't go away or stop the quarry, go away and come back, or you have to fix all the ice yourself. You can also add live sources like we did right here, but those obviously create a bit of lag when they are moved. The other solution is just use the old system that I had on the previous quarry. It should just work fine on this quarry, but it's just a bit bigger. Xcom did some really nice changes on the bottom. So the flying machine designs are still mine, but he changed some things right here to actually make sure that only 5 block clearance right here was needed. This meant that you could use a much simpler tunnel bore and did not have to use the special tunnel bore to create the 7 high block space that was required first. The last thing I did with this quarry was making the TNT chamber more efficient. This was done by Xcom and me and actually took a lot of work. So previously we had a problem that the 2 block strings were pushed out like this. This meant that it was often the case that blocks of this block string landed on this block right there, and then they will be blown up. It was not possible to have the TNT explode lower, so you could create a bit of an arc, which made these blocks just fall in the water stream and not on this ledge, because then blocks actually did not have enough time to fall and they will be blown out of the air by the TNT. This meant that we had to do some serious changes right here to make the system more efficient. So instead of just pushing these blocks forward right here, we actually first pushed them down and then moved them over again right here. We also had to make some changes to the water collection. So previously the water system was 10 blocks wide. This unfortunately was not wide enough. The blocks could land on the side just like that. So we had to make it not 10 blocks wide but 12 blocks wide. So this of course was a bit of a challenge, since it actually means that everything here is on a push limit. But it was just about possible by using about the same trick as earlier. So earlier we pushed the water stream with pistons that create a block shield. Right now we actually push other pistons which push the water system. Just because we want the water system to be a bit more in that direction. So I guess now I told you all this stuff, I can just activate the quarry so we can actually see it in action. I can activate the quarry right here. Then this flying machine with all the blocks will fly upwards. The TNT modules will start looping and all the blocks get destroyed. So here you can see the first TNT incoming. You can also see that the TNT is a lot faster now. Here you can see the first blocks being exploded. So here you can see the clock where the TNT Jupiter runs on. It started when this redstone block was moved forward. And it will stop when these pistons push the entire clock one block forward, because then this piston will be permanently powered by this redstone block. This also sent all the flying machine back down, because those terracotta did move next to the observers to trigger the flying machine again. What it also did was launching this first flying machine. This creates delay for the roof to be moved. So now a second flying machine is launched, and when this will reach the other end, then the roof is moved. So we used two separate flying machines because this roof was not large enough for one flying machine. That flying machine would not create enough delay, and it is a better idea to fly flying machines at this height. So now you can see the whole roof being moved. You can stop the flying machine by just placing an immovable block right here, or you can just remove it so it will go into the next cycle. I quickly want to thank everyone who made it till this point in the video. I can imagine that it was quite boring to just watch the design process of this quarry, but I wanted to make it like this because I really don't want to give the impression that I put this thing together in 10 hours. Because that obviously is just not the case. From now on, the video gets a bit more technical and might be a bit harder to understand. In my opinion, it also gets a lot more interesting, so I'll definitely advise to just keep watching. This quarry contains one more system, what I did not talk about. That is a fail-safe system, which is built by to note the name. You can see the fail-safe system right here. There are some observers and pistons, and they are being pushed forward by the same pistons that create the block shield. What happens when the observer and pistons get pushed forward is this observer will be in the location of the piston and will bit power the piston. Normally the piston won't extend because it's not updated, but actually the last piston in the chain, this piston right here, is directly updated. This updates all the other pistons, and if all the pistons were extended, then the update chain will reach the last piston in the row here. In that case, this observer is being updated and the whole quarry moves one extra cycle, just like that. But if one of the flying block grabbers got stuck for whatever reason, then this chain will be obstructed, and also the signal will not reach the other end, since one of these pistons did not get updated, and from there none of the other pistons would get updated, and therefore this piston would not extend. This means that the quarry is turned off within minutes after something went wrong. This prevents the system from crashing badly. Right now the time has finally come to talk about the TNT system. So this TNT system has a bit of a problem. Well, it's not really a problem, but just a thing to keep in mind. So the blocks come in so fast that 2 blocks come in when the TNT explodes, so each TNT has to blow up at least 2 blocks per block stream. This can create a bit of a problem when there are certain cave formations. For example, one of these blocks can be pushed in, then when the second block is about to be pushed in, and when the TNT wants to explode on the second block, there can for example be a cave formation, which makes it that there is no second block. So when the second block is pushed, there is just an air block and the block is not being pushed, which means that the block stream does not move when the TNT explodes. And this of course is a bit of an issue because the blocks then have a higher blast resistance. So this can happen multiple times in a row, and so it can happen that the TNT system slowly fills up. So of course these blocks are still blasted by the TNT, but they have a much higher blast resistance, and this might just create a problem. But there was actually an easy trick for this, which I could use to make sure that this does not happen, or at least not happen as often. Before I can talk about what this trick exactly is, I first need to tell some things about the rate at which the blocks are brought up. This flying machine here is a flying machine that flies 2 blocks per second. In other words, you would expect that each 10 game ticks there is a block pushed over. So this is not entirely the case, and I can show that when this flying machine is a bit higher. If you pay close attention to the block stream, you can actually see that it is pushed 2 times fast after each other, and then it takes a bit more time. 2 blocks that are pushed fast after each other have a difference of 10 game ticks, like you would expect. However, when there is a bit more difference between the blocks being pushed, it actually does not take 10 game ticks but 16 game ticks. So there are 6 additional game ticks. These additional game ticks are caused by these sticky pistons. So a sticky piston in a limestone contraption like this normally adds 6 extra game ticks of delay. From now on, I will refer to those 2 blocks that are pushed fast after each other as a set of 2 blocks. A set of 2 blocks obviously has a block, the first block and the second block. So the block that is pushed first and the block that is pushed second. And this will become important later on. The sets of blocks are also visible on the flying machine. So here you can see a set of 2 blocks. The blocks are connected to each other. In this case, the first block is also the first block in a set of 2, and it will be pushed first. The second block will be pushed close after that, and is the second block in a set of 2 blocks. So 2 blocks are pushed in every 26 game ticks, and I also had the TNT system run on the 26 game tick clock. This means once the TNT system is synchronized, it will actually stay synchronized and always explode when the blocks are moving. There is still the choice left if you want to explode the TNT on the first block of a set of 2 blocks or on the second set of a set of 2 blocks. And this choice actually matters a lot, and I'll go into that now. Here you can see a simplified version of the block rails of the Quarry. So I will use this to explain what the trick exactly is that is being used. So the TNT explodes when the second block is pushed in, the second block of a set of 2. I call it the set of 2 blocks with these red blocks and the white blocks. And I also put TNT next to the sets to indicate at which blocks the TNT explode. So it is really important that those red blocks are in this location, because when the blocks are pushed off this layer of the flying machine, then the TNT explodes. So for example, if you have a situation like this where all the blocks are there, then blocks are pushed at this moment, and you are sure that the block streams are pushed when the TNT explodes, so no problems there. Also, when each time the top layers miss, then you are also still good, because the blocks are still being pushed when the TNT explodes. However, you might think you have a problem where the situation is more like this. So, when the blocks are all in the first position and not in the second position, but this is where the trick comes in. You can see what happens when I move this flying machine 1 block upwards. So you have to pay, in order for the blocks to stay in the first position, they also have to go up by 1 block, because I moved the flying machine 1 block, of course. But in this case that does not happen. So next to the slime block is the position of the second block, but all those blocks that are now in the first position are not attached to a slime block. So when I move this flying machine up by one block, oh great, I still don't have any observers, but just quickly do it like this. You can see that all the glass is, or all the stone is not moved because it's not attached to a slime block. So this means from now on it actually is in the second position, so in the position where it will explode when the TNT is being moved. So I can put the glass back so you can see that this indeed is the second position. So what this basically means is that if you have in a set of 2 blocks, if you only have 1 block, then you would expect that there is a 50% chance of it being pushed over in the first position or it being pushed over in the second position. But as you can see here, this is actually not the case. And if you have the blocks in the first position, then they are not attached to the slime block for the first time it goes up, and they will actually sink to the second position and therefore be in the second position, and the block streams then are moved when the TNT explodes. So this is why I chose to explode the TNT on the second block, so when the second block is pushed instead of on the first block. And this actually means that the TNT chamber is a whole lot more reliable. So recently Mango built up his Quarry on the Cyclops server, and they ran into some unexpected issues. Most of those issues were really hard to test in survival, simply because they are so rare to happen. But I took note of most of the issues and tried to solve them in this Quarry. So a few issues were really unsolvable, for example 12 rails in a row with water behind it. So this can create a gap in the block shields, and then water can flow inwards, but this is so unlikely to happen that it is really nothing you have to take into account. Then they had some other issues, mainly with block shield erosion, so I'll just play some clips now, and those come from Mango's video. Or the block shield erosion in his Quarry is a thing because the block shields get created from the top to the bottom, so first the top is tried to be pushed and then the bottom. And as you can see, the sand here fell down, basically making the block shield here 1 block less thick. And therefore this, if this happens 12 times in a row, then you can actually destroy the complete block shield. I think this is really unlikely to happen 12 times in a row, and I don't think it will really create a problem. But in this case it is solved anyway, because the block shield is not created from the top, it's actually from the bottom, so you can see that the sand just stays in position. There exist some other problems when you work or create block shields or sort gravel from the top. So in this design I sort everything from the bottom, which solves some other issues, but I won't go into depth on those issues. I mention this not because I try to down-talk Mango's design. I think it's really an amazing design, but I just wanted to mention some of the problems with his Quarry and how it could be solved in this version. This does not mean that there are no problems with his Quarry though. Simply those sorts of problems that I just mentioned are really hard to test, and it is really hard to find them out just by running a design for a long time. There might be a few things that are a problem on this design, but there were no problem on the Mango's design. So I might have missed those problems, and that is why I still run this design on quite a long area. But I can't guarantee that I do find every single problem. So this means that the Quarry might still crash after every 100 blocks or so. So that's still why we have this fail-safe systems. But it should be relatively reliable, at least for an overworld Quarry. So in the overworld there are really so many block formations and just in general things you have to take into account that you can't possibly solve all of them. So that's why overworld Quarries probably will never be 100% reliable. So I want to thank Race, Pingu, To Know To Name, and Xcom for helping me. Race mainly helped concept-wise in the start of the Quarry. Pingu, Xcom, and To Know To Name helped later with actually designing the Quarry, mainly in the last phases when it was a lot of improvement work. I'll leave links to their channels in the description so you can find them too. Also, Xcom and To Know To Name are the ones who started this Quarry, so you can thank them for the nice blue roof and most important, the randomly rotated arrows on the side here, the terracotta. I apologize for this video being a bit rough from time to time. This is of course my first video where I speak, and this of course gives some difficulties, mainly because it is the first time. I am of course open for feedback of any sort. I don't think I will speak in every video from now on. It simply took a lot of time to edit, but that might also be because this is a 40-minute plus long video. So I think I'll just speak in the videos that tend to take a bit longer, and for the shorter videos on smaller subjects I might just still use subtitles since it is a bit easier. Anyway, thanks for listening and see you next time.